Before I begin, this is a fictional story. The names, the places, the events all imagined. But the feelings inside it, those are real. If you've ever loved someone quiet, if you've ever lost someone slow, this story is for you. Now, let me tell you what happened. My name is Marlene Whitaker. I'm 45 years old. I'm a widow. I work nights at the Cedar Hollow Senior Care Home in Western Massachusetts. I make $39,000 a year, and I drive a Toyota Corolla that is older than most of the nurses I train. 2 weeks ago, I held my grandfather's hand and watched him take his last breath. I didn't know what was coming. How could I, under two yellow canvas tarps in the back of his garage, sat $70 million? He died with $68,000 of debt. He never spent a single penny of that money, not one. And the only person he trusted with the key was me. A widow, a night shift nurse, a woman who had no idea who her own grandfather really was. There are some doors a man keeps locked his whole life, not because of what he's hiding, but because of what hiding cost him. My grandfather kept his locked for 54 years, 3 padlocks, 1 brass key, and a promise he made to himself in 1972 that no one in this family would ever know who he really was. He kept that promise until the day he died. Let me tell you about the morning we buried him. It was raining. October in Massachusetts. The kind of rain that doesn't fall so much as hang there. Cold. Indifferent. Soaking through my wool coat before the priest opened his book. I was wearing the black coat Daniel had bought me our last Christmas together. 3 years ago. Before the cancer got the rest of him. 11 people stood at that grave. 11. For a man who lived in Cedar Hollow for 53 years. I didn't cry. Not yet, because across from me stood my brother Corbin, and he was checking his watch. Twice. 3 times. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. His shoes were polished. His hair was silver at the temples. In that way, rich men's hair goes silver, like it was styled by a stylist, not by time. He had flown in from Chicago that morning. He would fly back that same night. He hadn't said a word to me. Not at the funeral home, not in the limousine, not now with the rain coming down and the priest reading from Ecclesiastes about a time to be born and a time to die. 24 years. That's how long it had been since Corbin and I actually talked. Since he packed his bags at 23 and left for Chicago, and I stayed behind to take care of Mama. Because someone had to. Because Mama's hands shook so bad she couldn't hold a fork. Because the multiple sclerosis was eating her from the inside out. Corbin got out. I stayed. He sent a Christmas card once a year. Pre-printed. Just signed the Whitakers. Which was funny because his wife divorced him in 2015 and there were no children. So really the card just said Corbin. And there he was. 24 years later, checking his watch over our grandfather's grave. The priest closed the book. People started to leave. Corbin walked past me without stopping. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said. He wasn't looking at me. "We need to talk about the house." That was it. That was all he said. I stood there in the rain, alone, watching the gravediggers wait at a respectful distance with their shovels. And I thought about my grandfather's hand, the way it felt that last night, cold at the fingertips first, then the palm, then nothing. I thought about the way he looked at me right at the end, like he wanted to say something, like he had something to say. But he didn't. He just squeezed my hand once, and let go. Now, if you've ever stood over a grave in the rain, if you've ever lost the last person who really knew you, I want you to pause with me here for a moment, because I know some of you are watching this tonight, and you've buried people too. Tell me in the comments, who did you bury? Who do you still miss on rainy days? Sometimes we just need to say their name out loud. I spent the next 2 days cleaning, because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. You scrub the kitchen counters until your knuckles are raw. You bleach the bathroom tile. You vacuum behind the refrigerator. You wash every dish in the cabinet. Even the ones he hadn't used since Grandma died in 1991. The whole house smelled like pine cleaner and grief. Same brand he used for 40 years. Murphy oil soap. The yellow bottle with the little cartoon man on the label. I couldn't stop crying. Except I could. I just didn't know when it would stop or when it would start. I'd be folding a dish towel, and suddenly I was sitting on the kitchen floor, pressing the towel against my face, sobbing like a child. Then it would pass, and I'd stand up, and I'd keep cleaning, because the alternative was sitting still, and sitting still was unbearable. Sitting still meant thinking about Daniel. It meant remembering the sound of his oxygen tank. It meant remembering the empty chair on the porch. It meant remembering that I was 45 years old, and I had no one left. The phone rang on Tuesday. I was on a ladder dusting the top of the bookshelf in his study. I almost didn't answer, but the screen said Corbin, and I sighed. And I stepped down, and I picked up. Hello, Corbin. Marlene. He was the only one who called me Marlene like that. Not Marley, not sis. Marlene. Like he was reading it off a tax document. I've been on the phone with the bank all morning, he said. No greeting. No, how are you? No, how are you holding up? There's a problem. I sat down on the edge of the desk. What kind of problem, the house? There's a second mortgage. He took it out 4 years ago. He never told me that. Of course he didn't. Corbin's voice was flat. Tired. The voice of a man who had already decided how this conversation was going to go. He's 3 months behind. $68,000. The bank's already filed for foreclosure. I could hear myself breathing loud in my own ear. Foreclosure. They've scheduled an auction 30 days from now. Unless we pay the balance in full, $68,000. I don't have it, Marlene. That stopped me. Because Corbin had it. Corbin always had it. Corbin had a 4-bedroom house in Chicago. A Lexus. A boat he kept somewhere on Lake Michigan. But I didn't argue. I didn't have time. What do? We sell the house. Corbin. Marlene, listen to me. I'm flying in tomorrow morning. I'm bringing my attorney. We're going to inventory everything in that house, and we're going to put it on the market within a week. Anything we get over the mortgage covers funeral expenses. Whatever's left, we split. He'd been dead 2 weeks, and the bank didn't care. I closed my eyes. Corbin. Don't make this difficult, Marlene. He hung up. I didn't cry. I was surprised by that. I thought I would. Instead, I stood up. I put the phone down on the desk. I looked at the bookshelves, lined with engineering manuals and old issues of Road and Track. I looked at the worn leather chair where he used to sit and read at night, the headrest darkened from 40 years of his hair. And I looked at the bottom right drawer of the desk. And I don't know why, but I walked over and I pulled on the handle. It stuck. I pulled harder. It opened with a jerk that sent me stumbling backwards. Inside the drawer, a leather-bound journal, a stack of folders, and a small wooden box tucked all the way at the back. The wood was dark with age, smooth, like something that had been handled 1,000 times. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. I sat down in his chair. I opened it. Inside was a brass key. Old. The kind of brass that had gone almost green at the edges. Heavy, the size of my palm. With a square shaft and a pattern of teeth that looked more like sculpture than function. Underneath the key was an envelope. White, plain. One word on the front, written in his careful left-handed script. Marlene. My hands started shaking. I couldn't explain it. I wasn't shaking a minute before. I wasn't crying. I wasn't anything. And now my hands were trembling so hard I could barely slide my finger under the flap. The letter was 1 page, folded in thirds. My eyes blurred before I started. I wiped them with the back of my hand. I read, My dearest Marlene, if you are reading this, I have gone to find your grandmother. There are things I never told you, things I never told anyone in this family. Not your father, not your mother, not Corbin. I had reasons. Some of them were good. Most of them were just reasons. The key in this box opens the padlocks on the garage, behind the workshop poster, the one of the factory in Maranello. There is a safe. The combination is 546871. What you find there will explain everything. Don't tell Corbin until you understand the whole story. Not because I don't trust him, because he doesn't understand value the way you do. He never has. That isn't a criticism, Marlene. Some people see the world that way. Some don't. You don't. The measure of a person is not what they own. It is what they give away. I have tried to live by that. Not always well, but always honestly. You were always the one who saw me. Really saw me. When everyone else looked past. For that alone, you deserve the truth. With all my love, Grandpa. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down on the desk. And I walked to the window. And I looked out at the backyard. The garage stood at the end of the property, detached, old, painted the same dull red it had been my whole life. 3 padlocks on the door, the same 3 padlocks, for 37 years. I had never been inside. Except once. When I was 8, I was riding my bicycle. I remembered it perfectly. The chain came off. I started crying. He came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. And he didn't say anything. He just took my hand. And he led me across the yard. To the garage door. And he unlocked it. And he pulled it open just wide enough for the 2 of us to slip inside. And then he closed it firmly behind him. "This is our secret," he said. His voice was low, different from his regular voice. "I don't bring people in here, Marley. Do you understand?" I nodded. I was 8. I would have agreed to anything. He fixed my bicycle on a workbench. He showed me how the chain went over the gear. He let me turn the pedal with my hand. And the whole time behind us in the back of the garage, there were these 2 huge shapes, covered with canvas tarps, yellow with age, bigger than refrigerators, bigger than couches, bigger than anything that should have been in a garage in a small town in western Massachusetts. I asked him. I remember asking, "Grandpa, what's under there?" And he looked at the tarps for a long second. His face did something I didn't understand at the time. Something soft. Something that almost looked like he was about to cry. And he said, "Just old projects, sweetheart. Things from another life." Then he handed me my bicycle. And he walked me out. And he locked the door behind us. I never went in there again. For 37 years. I stood at the window for a long time. I don't know how long. The light changed. The brass key was still in my hand. I realized somewhere in the back of my mind that Corbin was flying in the next morning. With a lawyer. To inventory everything. Which meant, whatever was in that garage, whatever my grandfather meant by the truth, I had until tomorrow to find it. Now let me ask you something. Before I open that door with you, if you had a key like this, from someone you loved, who had already gone, would you open it right away, or would you sit with it a while first? Comment and tell me. I want to know what kind of woman you are. The garage door was heavier than I remembered. I was standing in front of it now. The sun was setting behind the oak trees at the edge of the property, casting long red light across the yard. I could hear a dog barking 3 houses down, a car going past on Maple Street. I was holding the brass key in one hand, my phone in the other. The phone had a flashlight app. I didn't know if the lights inside still worked. I started with the top padlock. The key fit. It turned. Click. My heart was doing something strange. Beating sideways, like it wasn't sure which direction blood was supposed to go. Second lock. Click. Third lock. Click. I pulled the chain off. Let it fall to the ground. The door was just standing there now, nothing holding it shut except its own weight. I put my hand on the handle. I pulled. The hinges screamed, not creaked. Screamed. Like they hadn't been moved in years and they wanted me to know it. The sound went through my teeth. I stepped back. A wall of stale air rolled out at me. Oil and dust and old metal and something else. Something I couldn't name. The smell of a place that had been sealed for a very long time. I reached inside and found the light switch. I flipped it. Nothing. I flipped it again. A single fluorescent tube up in the ceiling stuttered. Went dark. Stuttered again. And then slowly, reluctantly, the whole back row of lights came to life. Buzzing. Cold and white and harsh. The garage opened up in front of me. And I forgot how to breathe. The workbench was exactly where I remembered it. Same place, same scarred wood, same arrangement of tools hung on a pegboard above it. each one in its own outlined silhouette, so you'd know if anything was missing. My grandfather did that. He outlined every tool. He was that kind of man. There was a coffee mug on the bench, half full, which meant he was out here recently. The mug had a thin film of mold on top, but it was there. He was here, maybe last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, sitting on this bench, drinking coffee, doing what I didn't know. I walked in. My footsteps echoed. The garage was bigger than it had any right to be. 20 feet wide, 30 feet deep, concrete floor, wood beams overhead, and in the middle of the floor, two shapes covered with canvas tarps, yellow with age, exactly the way I remembered them, 37 years ago, when I was 8 years old, when I asked him what was under there. Just old projects, sweetheart. Things from another life. I stood in front of the first tarp. My hand was shaking. Bad. I reached out. I touched the canvas. It was stiff, almost like cardboard. The dust that came off it was heavy and dark, and fell in soft drifts onto my shoes. I took the corner of the tarp, and I pulled. The dust exploded around me. I couldn't see. I couldn't see anything for a full 10 seconds. I was coughing. My eyes were burning. The fluorescent light was somewhere up there, but it might as well have been on the moon. The dust settled. Slowly, particle by particle, and what was in front of me, a car. White. Low. So low it didn't look like it should be able to drive. Wedge-shaped. All angles. No curves anywhere. Like someone took a paper airplane and made it out of metal. The doors didn't open like normal doors. They tilted up. Up like wings. Like the whole car wanted to fly away. I didn't know cars. But I knew this one. Because every boy in my high school had a poster of this car on his bedroom wall in 1986. Every single one. A Lamborghini, Countach, white, in my grandfather's garage. For my entire life, I couldn't move. I stood there with my hand still on the tarp. The tarp was half fallen. The dust was still drifting. My mouth was open. And I could hear myself making a sound that wasn't a word. It was just a sound. Air coming out of me. And then slowly, I turned. And I looked at the second shape. The second tarp. Bigger than the first one. Or maybe it was just that I was seeing it now. Really seeing it. The shape underneath. Long and low. And curved in a way the Lamborghini wasn't. Soft. Almost feminine. I walked over. My legs weren't quite working. I took the corner of the second tarp. And I pulled. It was red. The dust was the same. The cough was the same. The burning eyes were the same. But underneath the dust, underneath 54 years of dust, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. Red. Deep red. The kind of red that has a name. I knew this one, too. I knew it because of a photograph in a magazine my grandfather used to leave on his coffee table. Road and Track. December 1985. He read every issue cover to cover. And on the cover of that one issue was a car exactly like this one. And the caption underneath said, "The Holy Grail." And I said, "Grandpa, what's a Holy Grail?" And he said, "Something so rare and so beautiful that men spend their whole lives looking for it." And I said, "Did you ever find one?" And he didn't answer. He just turned the page. A Ferrari 250 GTO, in my grandfather's garage. My grandfather, who fixed my bicycle when I was 8, who wore the same brown cardigan for 10 winters in a row, who drove a Ford pickup with rust on the wheel wells, who couldn't pay his second mortgage, a Ferrari 250 GTO. I sat down on the concrete floor. I didn't sit, my legs gave out. There's a difference. I sat there in the dust, surrounded by tarps, surrounded by the impossible, and I started to laugh. And then I started to cry. And then I couldn't tell which one I was doing anymore. I just sat there, making the sound that was half laugh and half sob. I don't know how long I sat on that concrete floor. Long enough that when I finally stood up, my legs had gone numb. Long enough that the fluorescent light overhead had started to hum in a different key. Long enough that the sun outside had set completely, and the yellow of the garage light was the only color left in the world. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you, if you believe in sacred family secrets, if you believe some things stay hidden for a reason, hit that like button for me. Just a small thing. But I need a little courage before I keep telling you what happened next. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table all night, with the laptop open. I read every article I could find about the Ferrari 250 GTO. There were 36 of them ever made, 36 in the entire world, from 1962 to 1964. Hand-built, approved personally by the old man in Maranello himself, each one worth a fortune that defied my understanding. I read about the Lamborghini Countach. I learned that 1985 was a special year. The Quattrovalvole, the four-valve version, the model that put real money into the Italian supercar market. And underneath all of this, behind every article, every paragraph, every photograph, the same question. How did my grandfather, a man who couldn't pay his mortgage, end up with two of these? How the doorbell rang at 7:42 in the morning. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I was still wearing the same sweater I wore the day before. My hair was wild. My eyes were red. I opened the door. It was Harriet Colby, my friend from the senior care home, 67 years old, silver hair pulled back into a French twist, wearing a winter coat over what looked like scrubs. She worked the morning shift. She had stopped by on her way in. "Honey," she said. The word landed soft. "You didn't show up yesterday." "I'm sorry. I forgot to call. I called you 4 times. I'm sorry, Harriet. Are you okay?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I stood there in the doorway, in my grandfather's house, in a sweater I'd been wearing for a day and a half, with $68,000 of debt and $70 million of car in the garage, and a brother flying in at 10. And I started to cry. I didn't even cover my face. I just stood there and cried. Harriet didn't say anything. She walked in. She closed the door behind her. She put her arms around me, and she held me while I sobbed into her coat. After a while, I could talk again. "I have to show you something," I said. She nodded. She followed me out the back door, across the yard, to the garage. I unlocked the padlocks. I opened the door. I flipped the light switch. The fluorescent tube buzzed to life. Harriet stopped in the doorway. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She stood there for a long time, looking at the 2 cars, with one hand pressed flat against her chest, like she was holding her own heart in place. Then she said, "Oh, Marley, that's all. Oh, Marley." She walked slowly into the garage. She circled the Ferrari first. She didn't touch it. She just looked at it, like it might disappear if she got too close. "Your grandfather," she said. "I know. All this time. I know." She stopped at the workbench. She looked at the coffee mug. She looked at the outline tools on the pegboard. She looked at the workshop poster on the wall, the one of the factory in Italy, sometime in the late 1960s. "He used to come into Denny's," Harriet said. I looked up. I waited tables there before I went into nursing. This was God. 1981, 1982. He used to come in every Tuesday. He'd sit at the counter for hours drinking coffee, just 1 cup, refilled, drawing on the napkins. "Drawing what I don't know, honey." Harriet's voice was far away, like she wasn't in the garage anymore, like she was back in 1981. Engines, I guess. Pieces of engines. I never paid attention. I thought he was just doodling. I didn't say anything. Harriet turned to look at me. "He told me something once. He'd had 3 cups by then," he said. "And I never forgot this." He said, "Harriet, the worst mistake a man can make is letting other people define his worth." She stopped. She wiped her eyes. I always wondered what he meant. I looked at the Ferrari. "I think I know now," I said. "The poster." I almost forgot. I walked to the back wall of the garage. I looked at the poster of the factory in Maranello. It was hanging slightly crooked, slightly off, like it was put up to hide something. I took it down. There was a safe behind it. Of course there was. A small steel safe set into the wall. Black dial, brass handle. I spun the dial, 5, 4, 6, 8, 7, 1. The handle gave. The door swung open. Inside the safe, a leather portfolio. Heavy, with a prancing horse stamped into the corner. A second portfolio, thinner, with a raging bull. A bundle of photographs, black and white, tied with a piece of brown string. A small velvet pouch, and one folder, plain manila, with 3 words written across the front in my grandfather's careful handwriting. Dispute. 1972. I laid everything out on the workbench. I started with the photographs. The first one was my grandfather. But not my grandfather. A young man. Maybe 30, maybe 31. Standing in a garage that was not this garage. The light was different. The wall behind him was different. He was wearing coveralls. There was grease on his hands. He was smiling at the camera. And next to him, standing next to him, older, smaller, wearing dark glasses, was the old man from Maranello, the man from every magazine my grandfather ever read, the man who built an empire out of engines and stubbornness, standing next to my grandfather, smiling. I dropped the photograph. I picked it up. I looked at the back. There was writing. Maranello, 1968. The day he told me he believed in me. My grandfather's handwriting, younger, but unmistakable. The next photograph. My grandfather, bent over an engine on a test bench. The engine was uncovered. You could see the cylinders. He was pointing at something with a wrench. There was another man next to him in a white shirt. The next photograph. My grandfather at a podium, receiving an award. The plaque read in English and Italian, for outstanding innovation in automotive engineering. The next photograph. My grandfather in Italy, standing in a piazza, wearing a suit, smiling, squinting in the sun. Younger than I had ever seen him in any photograph in this house. I stopped. I couldn't keep going. I sat down on the workbench and I pressed my hands against my eyes, and I tried to fit any of this into the shape of the man I knew. The man who wore the same brown cardigan, who fixed my bicycle, who couldn't pay his mortgage. I couldn't make it fit. He didn't tell me. He didn't tell anyone. I opened the manila folder. Dispute, 1972. The papers inside were typed. Old. The kind of typed where you could see where the typewriter ribbon hit the page. It took me 20 minutes to read through it. When I finished, I understood some of it. Not all of it, but some. In 1971, my grandfather developed something. An engine technology. The papers didn't say exactly what. They said only that it was a substantial advancement of significant commercial value. The company claimed it as their property. Said my grandfather had developed it on company time with company resources. My grandfather disagreed. There was a fight. Lawyers got involved. In the end, in 1972, there was a settlement. My grandfather received one automobile, selected from the production catalog, plus a financial payment. In exchange, my grandfather agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Permanent, ironclad, lifetime. He could never speak of his work there, never publish, never claim credit, never tell anyone what he did. If he violated the agreement, he would forfeit the car, the payment, everything. My grandfather signed it in 1972, when he was 34 years old. He kept that promise for 54 years. He kept it until the day he died. I sat there. I sat there for a long time. The car, the Ferrari, the 250 GTO sitting 15 feet away from me. That was the car. That was the settlement. He picked it. He chose the rarest one, the Holy Grail, and he hid it for 54 years in a garage in a small town in western Massachusetts, because he couldn't tell anyone what it meant, because if he did, he'd lose it, and losing it wasn't about money. I understood that now. It was never about money. I heard a car in the driveway, gravel under tires. I froze. I looked at my phone. 9:47. Corbin was early. I heard voices outside. 2 of them. One of them was Corbin. The other was a man I didn't recognize. The voice was older, heavier, the voice of a man who charged by the hour. The lawyer. Corbin had brought him. Of course he brought him. I moved fast. I swept all the documents back into the safe. The portfolios, the photographs, the folder. I shoved the velvet pouch in last. I hadn't even opened it. I didn't know what was inside. There was no time. I closed the safe. I spun the dial. I hung the poster back on the wall. I walked out of the garage. I pulled the door shut behind me. I snapped each padlock back into place. 1, 2, 3. I dropped the brass key into the front pocket of my jeans. I could feel it there. Heavy, hot, like it was burning through the denim. I walked around the side of the house. Corbin was standing on the front porch. Charcoal suit, polished shoes, a briefcase in one hand. The man behind him was taller than Corbin. Older, 60s, gray hair combed straight back. A face that had spent 40 years looking at people across conference tables and finding them wanting. Thaddeus Merriweather. He smiled at me. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had already decided what was about to happen. Corbin looked at his watch. "Marlene," he said, "you ready? We've got a lot to get through." I stood there. I felt the brass key against my thigh. I thought about the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, the photograph of my grandfather standing next to the old man from Maranello, the settlement, the non-disclosure agreement. I thought about the man who fixed my bicycle when I was 8, the man who said, "Just old projects, sweetheart," the man who couldn't tell me, couldn't tell anyone, for 54 years. I took a breath. I smiled at my brother. A small smile. A careful smile. "I'm ready," I said. "Come inside." I held the door open. Corbin walked past me. The lawyer followed. I glanced over my shoulder. One last time. At the garage at the end of the property, the red door, the 3 padlocks, the 2 cars inside. My grandfather's secret. Mine now. I closed the door behind me. Now you know what I know. 2 cars, a key, a photograph with a man who changed the world, and a brother who thinks he's about to inherit half a house. Tell me, what would you do next? Would you tell him, or would you sit on it a while longer? I want you to think about it, because what happened next changed everything I ever believed about family. And I'll tell you the rest right after this. The door closed behind them, and I could feel my heart beating in my throat. Corbin walked straight into the living room like he owned it. Which he did. Half of it, according to the will. The lawyer followed. Thaddeus Merriweather set his briefcase down on the coffee table. The same coffee table where my grandfather used to leave his magazines. Road and Track, Car and Driver. Stacks of them going back decades. The briefcase made a sound when it landed. A heavy, expensive sound. A sound that said, "I am here to take things away, Marlene." Corbin didn't sit down. He was standing in the middle of the living room, looking around, cataloging. I could see his eyes moving. Lamp, bookshelf, recliner, television, each one getting a number in his head. "We need to start with the appraiser," he said. "Corbin, Thaddeus has already contacted an estate liquidator out of Boston. They can have someone here Friday." "Corbin, what we need to talk first." He looked at me for the first time since he walked in. "About what? About Grandpa?" He sighed. It was a specific sigh. A sigh I had heard my entire life. The sigh that meant, "I don't have time for this." The sigh he used when I was 16, and I tried to tell him Mama's tremors were getting worse. The sigh he used at the funeral when I said I wanted to do the eulogy. The sigh that meant, "Marlene, you are wasting my time. Marlene, we've got an hour, maybe 2. I know. What is it?" I looked at the lawyer. I looked at my brother. I took a breath. "I need to show you something outside." He didn't ask what. That was the strange part. He just looked at me, for one long second, and something passed across his face, something I couldn't read. And then he picked up his briefcase, and he followed me to the back door. The lawyer started to come too. I stopped him. "Just my brother," I said. Thaddeus Merriweather did not like this. His mouth tightened. But Corbin didn't tell him to come. So he sat down on the edge of the couch, and he opened his phone, and he started typing something, probably to whoever was paying his hourly rate. I walked Corbin out the back door, across the yard, toward the garage, and neither of us said a word. He stopped when he saw the padlocks. The chain was on the ground. The locks were open. He looked at me. That garage has been locked since I was a kid. I know. How did you? He left me a key. Corbin's face did something. I couldn't tell what. He left you a key. Yes. Where was it? In his desk. You went through his desk, Corbin. Please, just come inside. I need to show you something. Then you can be angry. He stared at me. Then he laughed. A small one. Almost a snort. Almost a sound of disbelief. Marlene, whatever's in here is not going to change anything. I didn't answer. I pulled the door open. The hinges screamed the same way they screamed the day before. I stepped inside. I flipped the switch. The lights burst to life, and I turned around. Just in time to see the look on my brother's face. He stopped in the doorway. He didn't move. He didn't move for a very long time. His briefcase was still in his hand, but his arm had gone slack. The briefcase was hanging there like he forgot he was holding it. His mouth was open, just slightly. His face had gone the color of paper. What? That's all he said. What? I waited. He took one step inside, then another. He set the briefcase down on the concrete floor. He didn't seem to know he was doing it. He walked toward the Ferrari. Slowly, like a man approaching something that might run. He stopped 6 feet away. He put one hand out, almost touched it, pulled his hand back. That's a 250 GTO. I nodded. That's a 250 GTO, Marlene. I nodded again. He turned. He looked at the Lamborghini. He looked back at the Ferrari. He looked at me. His voice was not his voice. Is this real? Yes. Is this real? Yes, Corbin. He sat down. Just sat down. Right there. On the concrete floor. In his charcoal suit. I walked over and sat down next to him. My knees were touching his. I hadn't sat next to my brother in 24 years. Where did he get them? His voice was flat, hollow, like someone scooped him out from the inside. He earned them. Marlene. Look at me. Look at me. I looked at him. His eyes were wet. I hadn't seen Corbin's eyes wet since 2010. Since our mother's funeral. He stood in the back of the church that day and didn't speak to anyone. He earned them. How, Corbin? You need to read something. I stood up. I walked to the back wall. I took the poster off. I spun the safe. 5, 4, 6, 8, 7, 1. The safe opened. I pulled out the manila folder. Dispute. 1972. I handed it to him. He opened it. He started to read. I watched his face. That was the only way to describe it. I sat on the floor next to him, and I watched his face go through every possible emotion in the space of about 10 minutes. Confusion first, then disbelief, then anger, a dark, hot anger that climbed up his neck. Mama! I know. Mama died because we couldn't afford the better treatment. Corbin, he had a Ferrari, Marlene. He had $70 million in this garage, and Mama died in a county hospital. His voice was cracking. Corbin! Listen! He let her die. He didn't let her die. He let her die, Marlene. I put my hand on his arm. He flinched, but he didn't pull away. Read the rest, I said. Read the agreement. Read what would have happened if he sold it. He read. I watched his face change again. Slower this time. The anger didn't go away, but underneath it, something else started to climb. Something older. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. He couldn't tell anyone. No, he couldn't sell it. They would have taken it back. Yes. He could have lost everything. Yes. Corbin put the folder down on his lap. He stared at the wall. He chose the car. Corbin. He chose the car over Mama. He chose his name. I didn't even know where the words came from, but once I said them, I knew they were right. He chose his name, Corbin. The car was just the proof. The car was the only thing in this world that knew what he'd done. The only thing that said, even if no one else ever knew. Elias Whitaker made this. Elias Whitaker changed something. If he sold it, he'd lose that. He'd lose everything he was. Corbin's face was breaking. I could see it happening. A man who had spent 30 years putting up walls, brick by brick, suit by suit, Lexus by Lexus, and the walls were coming down, in a garage in western Massachusetts, in front of his sister. I called him a failure, Corbin said. His voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. What? In 2001, the summer I left. I came back for a weekend to say goodbye. He sat me down on the porch, and he said, Corbin, you don't have to chase money to be somebody. You can stay here. You can have a good life. And he stopped. He was crying. He was crying the way a man cries who hasn't cried in a long time. Not loud, not sobbing. Just water on his face, and his shoulders shaking. I told him I didn't want to end up like him. I told him I didn't want to be a small man in a small town. I told him, Corbin. I told him I was better than him, Marlene. That's what I said, better. He put his face in his hands. I didn't say anything. I sat on the floor of my grandfather's garage. My brother was crying next to me. The Ferrari was 15 feet away. The Lamborghini was 20 feet away. The light was buzzing overhead. I put my arm around him. It was the first time I had touched my brother in 24 years. He didn't pull away. He leaned into me, and he cried. I want to stop right here and ask you something, because I know this part hurts. If you have a brother or sister you haven't spoken to in years, if there is silence between you, please, please, tell me their name in the comments tonight. Just their name, that's all. Because tomorrow isn't promised. And silence has a price. We heard footsteps. Both of us went still. Thaddeus Merriweather was standing in the doorway of the garage. He had been standing there. I didn't know how long. His face was doing something interesting. He was looking at the Ferrari. He was looking at the Lamborghini. His eyes were flicking back and forth, and I could almost see the dollar signs landing in them. Well, he said. He walked into the garage like he owned it. Well, well, well. Corbin stood up, wiped his face. Thaddeus, I told you to wait inside. Corbin, my friend. The lawyer's voice was smooth, lacquered. The voice of a man who could smell money the way a shark smells blood. I had no idea. No idea. This changes. Well, this changes everything, doesn't it? It changes nothing. Corbin, be reasonable. These cars need to go to appraisal immediately, tomorrow. I have a contact in Boston. Private auction, discreet. We can have these moved before the week is out. Thaddeus, the estate could clear 40, 50 million. Easy. And after fees, after taxes. Thaddeus, you and your sister would be looking at. Stop. The lawyer stopped. Corbin's voice was not the voice he came in with. It was lower, quieter, harder. We're not selling them today. We're not selling them this week. Get out of my grandfather's garage. The lawyer's face flickered. For 1 second. Just 1 second. I saw something in it. Calculation. A man rearranging his plans. Of course, he said. Smooth again. Of course, Corbin. Of course. I'll be in the car. He turned. He walked out. But I watched him go, and I knew. I knew that man was not done. After the lawyer left, Corbin sat back down. I sat back down. The two of us didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, Marlene. Yes. There's something I need to tell you. Okay. The house in Chicago, the Lexus, the boat. Yes. None of it is paid off. I looked at him. What, Marlene? I am. I am not. I am not what you think I am. I have not been what you think I am for a long time. Corbin, the house has 2 mortgages. The Lexus is leased. The boat is in storage because I couldn't keep paying the slip fee. My job has been on the bubble for 14 months. I am, Marlene. I am about 90 days from bankruptcy. I didn't move. That's why I wanted to sell this house. Not because I didn't care about him, because I was going to use my half of the proceeds to make my next payment. Corbin, I'm so sorry. Corbin, I'm so sorry, Marlene. He was crying again. I was crying. 24 years of distance. In a garage in western Massachusetts. Falling apart in about an hour. The two of us walked back to the house at dusk. We didn't talk about the cars anymore. We didn't talk about the lawyer. We just walked. When we got to the porch, Corbin stopped. He looked at the swing. The old porch swing. White paint flaking. The seat a little crooked from where Grandpa fixed it in 2008. "Can I sit here for a minute?" he said. "Yes." He sat. I sat next to him. The swing creaked under both of us. It hadn't creaked under both of us in 24 years. "He took me to a car show once," Corbin said. "What?" "In Boston. I was 10 years old. There was a Ferrari there, a red one. Newer than that one in the garage. But a Ferrari. I waited. He stood in front of that car for an hour, Marlene. An hour, just looking at it. I was bored out of my mind. I wanted to see the trucks." He laughed. "A small one, just air." And he turned to me, and he said, "Corbin, sometimes the most valuable things in the world are the ones nobody else recognizes." I felt my throat close. I thought he was making excuses. What? I thought he was talking about himself, saying, "Well, I don't have anything, but at least I have my values." I thought he was coping. Marlene. I thought he was coping. Corbin. He wasn't coping. No? He was telling me the truth. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. And I called him a failure, Corbin said. He put his face in his hands. I put my hand on his back. The swing creaked. The sun was setting on Maple Street, and my brother was back. After 24 years, my brother was back. Now let me ask you something before we keep going, because I know a lot of you are carrying this weight tonight. If you've ever said something to someone you love, something cruel, and you never got the chance to take it back, what was it? You can whisper it to me in the comments. Nobody has to know but you and me. Sometimes just saying it takes the weight off. The next morning, Harriet came by. I wasn't expecting her. She wasn't on shift. But she showed up, 8 a.m., with a brown paper grocery bag. And a face I couldn't quite read. "Honey, Harriet." "Can I come in?" I let her in. She set the bag on the kitchen table. She sat down. She didn't take her coat off. "Marley, I have something for you. I should have given it to you a long time ago. But your grandmother told me to wait. She said I'd know when. I think this is when." I sat down across from her. "Harriet, what is this?" She pulled a shoebox out of the bag. A shoebox. Old. Battered. The cardboard had gone soft at the corners. There was a piece of masking tape across the lid, with a single word written on it in a hand I didn't recognize at first. But then I did. I did. I would know it anywhere. Marley. In my grandmother's handwriting. A woman who has been dead for 35 years wrote my name on the shoebox before she died. Harriet. I know. Harriet. What is this? Open it, honey. I opened it. Inside the shoebox. Letters. Dozens of them, maybe 100. Folded, stacked, tied with white ribbon. The paper had yellowed. Some of the envelopes were unsealed. Some were sealed. They were all written in 2 different hands. One I didn't know. One I had just learned. My grandfather's. "Your grandmother gave me this box," Harriet said. Her voice was soft. 2 days before she died. November 1991. I was a nursing aide at the time. I was working at Cedar Hollow General. She was on my floor. The cancer was very fast. 6 weeks from diagnosis. You remember. You were 10. I remembered a hospital bed. I remembered being told to be quiet. She called me into her room. She gave me this box. She said, "Harriet, I need you to keep this. I need you to keep this for my granddaughter. Not now. Not for a long time. You'll know when. She'll need to read these one day to understand who they were. Both of them." Harriet's eyes were wet. She held my hand, Marley. She held my hand, and she said, "That little girl sees Elias in a way nobody else does. Not even our daughter. She's the one. She's always been the one." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry I waited so long, honey." But she said I'd know, and I think yesterday, in the garage. I knew. I reached across the table. I took Harriet's hand. I held it for a long time. Neither of us said anything. I didn't read the letters that day. I couldn't. I took the shoebox upstairs. I put it on my grandfather's bed. The bed that was still made the way he made it. Hospital corners, wool blanket folded at the foot. I sat next to the box for an hour. I didn't open it. I was afraid. I realized that. I was afraid of these letters. Because I had spent my entire life believing that the people I loved most were ordinary, that my grandfather was an ordinary mechanic, that my grandmother, who I barely remembered, was an ordinary woman who liked roses and made apple pie, and died too young. And in the last 2 days, I had learned that my grandfather was not ordinary. What if my grandmother wasn't either? What if I was the only ordinary person in this entire house? I went for a walk that afternoon, because I couldn't sit still, because Corbin was at the hardware store buying a new lock for the front door, because the house was too full of ghosts. I walked down Maple Street, turned left at the corner, walked past the old library, past the fire station, past the elementary school where I went to first grade, and I ended up at the Methodist church at the end of Main Street. Pastor Weller was sweeping the front steps. He was 72 years old, thin as a rail, silver hair, kind eyes. He looked up. He smiled. Marlene Whitaker, Pastor Weller. Come sit down. Can I get you some coffee? I sat down on the church steps. He sat down next to me. He set the broom aside. He didn't ask me why I was there. He just waited. I've been finding things out. About Grandpa. He nodded slowly, like he wasn't surprised. He was a good man, Marlene. I know. Did he ever tell you anything about his life? Pastor Weller looked out at Main Street, at the maple trees, at the sky. Your grandfather was my friend for 40 years, he said. He came to church every Sunday, sat in the back pew, left before I could shake his hand. He put a check in the collection plate every single Sunday, same amount, for 40 years. How much, I asked. Pastor Weller looked at me. Enough to put 6 kids through college, Marlene. Enough to buy hearing aids for 11 old women at the senior home. Enough to keep the food pantry open every winter. I stared at him. Anonymous, he said. Every dollar. He made me swear I would never tell a soul. But you're his granddaughter, and he's gone now, so I'm telling you. I couldn't speak. He came in one time, Pastor Weller said. Just once. Not on a Sunday, a Wednesday, in 2004. I was here alone. He walked in. He sat down where you're sitting right now. He said, Pastor, I've done something I can't tell anyone about, and I need to know if God forgives a man for keeping a promise that costs him everything. I said, Elias, God knows the shape of every promise a man ever kept, and he weighs them all. Your grandfather nodded. He said, Thank you. And he left. And he never mentioned it again. Not for 22 years. I put my face in my hands. He was giving it away, I said. Pastor Weller put his hand on my shoulder. He was giving it away his whole life, Marlene. Just quietly, the way he did everything. I sat on those church steps for a long time. Then I walked down Main Street, past the hardware store, past the drugstore, past the empty storefront where the shoe repair used to be. And I ended up at Nora's Kitchen, the diner with the red booths and the checkered floor and the pie case in the window. Nora Kinley was behind the counter, 58 years old, red hair going gray at the roots, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, apron with flour on it. She looked up when I walked in. Marlene. Honey. Come in. Sit down. I sat at the counter. She poured me a cup of coffee before I could say anything. I heard about your grandfather, she said. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Nora. She leaned on the counter across from me. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, You know he came in here every Tuesday morning for 30 years. I nodded, slowly. Black coffee, no sugar, same booth, right there. She pointed to the corner booth by the window, faced the sunrise, drew on the napkins. Drew what? Engines, she said. Little sketches, pieces of things. I don't know what any of them were. I asked him one time, What are you drawing, Elias? he said. Just some engines, Nora. Nothing important. But I could tell. It was important to him. She reached under the counter. She pulled out a small stack of paper napkins, yellow with age, held together with a rubber band. I kept some, she said. Not many. Just a few over the years. When he'd leave and forget. I thought, I don't know. I thought someday somebody might want them. She slid them across the counter to me. I picked up the top one. It was a sketch of a valve, beautifully drawn, precise, with little numbers next to it, measurements, notations in Italian. My hands started shaking. The next one was a piston. The next was an engine block cross-section. The next was something I couldn't identify at all, but it was covered in equations. I looked up at Nora. She was watching me. Her eyes were soft. He was somebody, wasn't he? She said. I nodded. I couldn't talk. She reached across the counter. She squeezed my hand. I always thought he was, Nora said. There's something about the quiet ones. You can just tell. I want you to think about that for a second. The quiet ones in your life. The uncle who never said much. The neighbor who fixed things and never asked for anything. The father who worked 40 years and never told you what he really wanted. If you've ever known someone like that, say their name in the comments tonight. Say it out loud. Let us all remember them together. I walked back to my grandfather's house at dusk. I put the napkins on the kitchen table. I sat down. I looked at them for a long time. And I finally understood something. He didn't hide because he was ashamed. He didn't hide because he had to. He hid because he had made peace with being invisible. Because the work itself was the reward. Because drawing engines on napkins in a diner on Tuesday mornings was enough for him. And Nora Kinley kept the napkins. And Pastor Weller kept his secret. And Harriet Colby kept my grandmother's shoebox. 3 women in one small town in western Massachusetts, carrying pieces of my grandfather for 40 years. And none of them ever told a soul. Until now. That night. I opened the shoebox. I lit the lamp on the desk in the study. The same lamp he used. The bulb gone yellow with age. I sat in his chair. I untied the white ribbon. I started with the oldest letter. Dated June 4th, 1973. My dearest Elias, you came home from the country that was not yours, with a heart that someone else had broken first. I knew the day I met you that I would never be your first love. I have made my peace with that. Italy will always have part of you. That is fine. I have the rest. I stopped. I stopped reading. I put the letter down. What? What was this? This wasn't my grandmother. This wasn't the woman who made apple pie. This was a woman. A woman with a voice. With a mind. With a sentence so sharp it cut me. I picked the letter back up. I kept reading. There were 47 letters in the box. I read them in order. She wrote him every year, on their anniversary, sometimes more. Sometimes she wrote him when she was angry. Once in 1979, after a fight, I would never know the details if she wrote a letter that just said, "You have been impossible this week. I love you anyway." Eleanor. She wrote him about my mother. Margaret. About how Margaret was such a serious child. Like you, Elias. She is so much like you. She wrote him about the garage. She wrote him about the cars. She knew about the cars the whole time. For 17 years of marriage. She knew. But the letter I couldn't get through was dated August 1989. Margaret was 40 years old. Margaret had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Margaret needed treatment. Real treatment. The expensive kind. The kind that might keep her on her feet for another decade. My grandfather was going to sell the Ferrari. I could tell. The letter was clearly a response to him telling her that. Elias. Listen to me. Don't. I know what you're about to do. I know why. I love you more for thinking of it. But don't. That money will help Margaret for 2 years. Maybe 3. The doctors have told us what is coming. We both know it. We have not been able to say it to each other. I will say it now. Margaret is dying. Slowly. But she is dying. And no amount of money will stop that. We can only make her comfortable. We will do that. We will sell my mother's pearls. We will take a second mortgage. We will work and we will pray. But we will not sell the car. Listen to me, Elias. Listen. That car is not a car. It has never been a car. That car is the only object in this world that knows what you did. It is the receipt. It is the proof. It is the one thing on this earth that says, Elias Whitaker was here. And he was a great man. And he changed the way an engine breathes. You will not sell that. Not for any reason. Margaret is our daughter. She is ours. We will hold her hand every day until we cannot hold it anymore. I will. You will. We will do this together. And when she is gone, God forgive me. When she is gone, we will still have her daughter, Marlene. Elias! That little girl is the future. You don't see it yet. But I see it. I have seen it from the day she was 4 years old. The day she climbed onto your lap at the kitchen table. You were drawing. I don't even remember what. You were lost in it. The way you get. And she watched you for a long time. And then she said, Grandpa, why are you sad? No one in this family has ever asked you that, Elias. Not me. Not Margaret. Not your own father when he was alive. Not one person in this entire family has ever looked at you and seen sadness. That little girl is 4 years old, and she sees you. She sees you. She is the one who will carry this, not Margaret, not Corbin, Marlene. And when she loses someone of her own, when she becomes a woman who understands what it means to hold a dying hand, then, and only then, she will understand what you carried, and why you carried it, when she is ready, when she is grown, when she has lived enough of her own life to understand what yours cost you. Then, and only then, the cars are hers. Save them for her, Elias. Save them for the little girl who saw. I put the letter down. I put my face in my hands. And I sobbed. I sobbed the way I sobbed at his bedside. The way I sobbed at her grave when I was 10 and didn't even understand what was happening. I sobbed the way I sobbed for Daniel. Because I didn't choose this. Because she chose me, my grandmother, a woman who had been dead since I was 10, pointed at me when I was 4, and said, That one will understand. She knew. She knew I would lose Daniel. She knew I would become a woman who sits by beds, who holds dying hands, who watches the light go out. She knew that only a woman who has known loss could understand a man who has spent his whole life sitting quietly with his own. I want you to hear me. If your husband has passed, if your mother has passed, if anyone you love has passed, and someone left something behind that only makes sense now after you've lost them, comment yes. Just the word yes. So I know you're out there. So I know I'm not the only one who understands what I'm about to tell you. I sat in his chair for a long time. I didn't move. Outside Maple Street was quiet. A dog barked once. A car went past. I thought about my grandmother, a woman I barely remembered. I remembered a hand stroking my hair. I remembered the smell of lavender. I remembered a voice singing something. I don't know what. That was all I had of her. 3 things. And now this. Now 47 letters. Now the knowledge that she chose me before I could read, before I could speak in full sentences. I thought about my grandfather, a man who kept a promise to himself for 54 years. A man who sat in a diner on Tuesday afternoons drawing engines on napkins because he had no one to show them to. A man who lost his name, his credit, his country, his first love, and built a life. A small life. A quiet life. In a small town. With a woman who saw him and waited for a 4-year-old girl to grow up so she could find the key. I realized something. I realized it in the dark of the study. At maybe 2 in the morning. I wasn't supposed to find these letters yesterday, or last week, or next year. Eleanor told Harriet I'd know when. Harriet was waiting for me to be ready. What if all of this? The timing of his death, the foreclosure notice, the brass key in the drawer, Corbin breaking down on a porch swing, Harriet showing up with a shoebox at 8 in the morning. What if none of it was a coincidence? What if my grandmother set this in motion in 1989, 37 years ago, and it had been moving toward me the whole time? I shook my head. I was tired. I was being dramatic. Except, except I wasn't. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in my grandfather's chair until the sun came up. I watched the light change in the windows. I listened to the house breathing. And somewhere around 6 a.m., I heard something. In the kitchen, a voice. Low, talking on a phone. I stood up. Slowly. I walked down the hallway. The kitchen door was open just an inch, and I could hear him. Thaddeus Merriweather, the lawyer. He had stayed the night in the guest room. Corbin let him. Because Corbin still trusted him. I stood in the hallway, and I listened. Yeah, 2 of them. Yeah. The 250 GTO and a Countach. Yeah, that one. A pause. No, no. The brother is. The brother is on board. I'm working him. He's broke. He'll sign anything I tell him to sign by Friday. A pause. The sister is going to be a problem, but I can handle her. Just get me a number we can use. A pause. He laughed. Yeah, well, Sentimental's got a price tag too. I think we can move it. Lowball appraisal, quick sale. 12 million for the Ferrari, 800K for the Lambo. Done by end of the month. A pause. My piece is the same. 10% plus the kicker. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. 12 million for a car worth 70. I stood there. I couldn't record him. My phone was upstairs, but my hands were free. I reached into the pocket of the sweater I was wearing. I found the little notepad I kept there for work notes, and I found a pen. And I wrote everything down, every word, every number, every name he mentioned. My hand was shaking, but I wrote. He talked for another 4 minutes, and I wrote it all. He talked about how he'd get Corbin to sign a power of attorney over the estate, how he'd have the cars moved to a private warehouse in Boston before the week was out, how the buyer was, and here was where his voice got really quiet. And I had to hold the notepad against the wall to keep writing. How the buyer was a private collector overseas, who did not ask questions, and paid in cash. I heard him say, yeah, the grandmother left a paper trail somewhere. The sister probably found it. I'll deal with that. And then, no, look, the old man's dead, the grandmother's dead, the mother's dead, there's just the 2 kids left, and one of them is bankrupt. We can do this clean. I stood there with 3 pages of notes in my hand. I didn't move until I heard him hang up. Then I walked back down the hall. I went into the study. I closed the door. I read what I had written. It was there. Every word. I texted Corbin, wake up, come downstairs, now. Quietly. He came down 5 minutes later, in a t-shirt and sweatpants, hair sticking up, face puffy from sleep. Marlene, what, sit down. He sat. I handed him the notepad. Read this. He read it. His face went through every color a face can go through. Pink first, then white, then a color that was almost gray, then red. A red that climbed up his neck and into his ears and stayed there. When he finished, he stared at the notepad for 10 seconds. He put it down. He stood up. He didn't say a word. He walked down the hall. I followed him. He went to the guest room. He threw the door open. Thaddeus Merriweather was sitting on the edge of the bed, tying his tie, whistling. He looked up. He smiled. The smile died on his face, because Corbin's face was something I had never seen before. Not in 24 years. Not in 45. Corbin walked into the room. Corbin walked right up to the lawyer. Corbin said, very quietly, "You're fired." The lawyer's eyes flickered. "Corbin, what are you? Get out of my grandfather's house." Corbin, "Whatever Marlene told you, I have you in writing, every word." The lawyer froze. "What my sister heard you. She wrote down every word, talking to your buyer, about the lowball, about the kicker, about the overseas collector." The lawyer's face drained. "Corbin, be reasonable. Get out." "Corbin, we can talk about this. There's room here for everyone. Listen, get out." The lawyer stood up. Slowly. He picked up his tie. He picked up his briefcase. He walked past my brother. He walked past me in the hallway. He stopped at the front door. He turned. He looked at me, and he said very softly, "You'll regret this, Ms. Whitaker." Then he walked out. We heard his car start. We heard it pull out of the driveway. We heard it disappear down Maple Street. Corbin was shaking. I walked over to him. I put my hand on his arm. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Marlene?" I almost. "Marlene!" I almost. "You didn't." "He almost." "Corbin, you stopped him. He was my lawyer for 9 years." "I know. He was my friend. I know." "Marlene, I don't know who I am." I put my arms around him. I held my brother, in the hallway of my grandfather's house, while the sun came up over Maple Street. I walked out to the garage at noon, just the two of us. I unlocked the padlocks. I opened the door. I flipped the light. The Ferrari and the Lamborghini were sitting there, the way they had been sitting for 54 years. Waiting. Corbin walked to the Ferrari. He put his hand on the fender. He didn't pull it back this time. He stood there with his hand on the car for a long time. Then he turned to me. "What now, Marlene, that? That right there." That was the question I didn't know I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. What now? Not, "I'll handle this." Not, "I've already decided." Not, "Marlene, we're doing it my way." Just, what now? I stood in the middle of the garage. I looked at the Ferrari. I looked at the Lamborghini. I looked at the photograph on the workbench, the one of my grandfather standing next to the old man from Maranello in 1968. I looked at the workshop poster on the wall, the poster he hung crooked on purpose, to hide the safe behind it. I looked at the brass key in my hand. I looked at my brother who had come back to me, after 24 years, in his sweatpants, in his bare feet, on the concrete floor of a garage in western Massachusetts. I took a breath. I said, "I think Grandpa already answered that question, Corbin. We just haven't been listening." Corbin opened his mouth to say something. He didn't get the chance, because we both heard it. A car, in the driveway, coming up the gravel, slow, unfamiliar. Corbin looked at me. I looked at Corbin. I walked to the garage door. I stepped outside into the noon sun. A black town car had parked at the end of the drive. The driver got out. He walked around to the back passenger door. He opened it. A man stepped out. White hair, late 60s, a camel-colored overcoat, Italian leather shoes, a leather attaché case in his right hand. He walked toward me across the gravel. He stopped. He smiled. It was a kind smile, a patient smile, the smile of a man who had been waiting a very long time to do this exact thing. He said, "Excuse me. I'm sorry to disturb. My name is Lorenzo Marchetti. I'm with the Heritage Department in Maranello. I'm looking for the family of Elias Whitaker." The garage door was still open behind me. The fluorescent light was still on. The Ferrari in its red was glowing in the sun that came through the open door. I couldn't see Corbin. I couldn't see anything. I just saw the man's face, and the way he was looking at the garage. And I understood. He knew. He already knew. Whatever I had just spent 2 days uncovering. This man knew it before I did. This man had been carrying it for longer than I had been alive. I took one step toward him. I heard myself say, "You'd better come inside. I want you to breathe with me for a second. Because we are close now. We are so close to the truth. But there is one more secret, and it is the biggest one of all. If you are still with me tonight, please, subscribe to this channel. I tell stories about hope, about second chances, about finding home in places you didn't expect. And I would love to have you here. Comment and tell me. Have you ever thought you were nobody, only to find out someone had been watching you your whole life, waiting to give you something, because that is what happened to me next. I brought him into the kitchen, because I didn't know where else to bring him. The living room was too formal. The study was full of papers. The garage was. The garage was not yet a place where you could sit and have a conversation. So the kitchen, where my grandfather drank his coffee for 53 years, where my grandmother made her apple pie, where I sat at 4 years old and asked him why he was sad. I pulled out a chair. I asked if he wanted coffee. He said yes. Black. Thank you. His English was precise, careful, the way a man speaks when he has practiced every sentence. He paused between phrases, the way Italians do, as if each word cost him something. Corbin was standing in the doorway. He looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us knew what was about to happen. I set the coffee in front of him. I sat down across from him. Corbin sat at the head of the table, the seat my grandfather used to sit in. Lorenzo Marchetti took a sip of his coffee. He set it down. He folded his hands on the table. Ms. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker. I want to begin by saying I am very sorry for your loss. Your grandfather. He was. He was a very great man. My throat tightened. You knew him, no. Then. I knew of him. I have known of him for most of my career. He paused. He looked at the coffee mug, like he was deciding where to start. I have been with the company for 32 years, he said. I am the head of our heritage department. We are responsible for preserving the legacy of the company. We track every car, every engineer, every person of significance who passed through Maranello. Okay. Your grandfather, Mr. Elias Whitaker. He was. How do I say this? He was a name inside the company for a very long time, a name that we did not speak, but everyone knew. Why didn't you speak it? He smiled. A small smile, a sad one. Because of the agreement? The 1972 agreement. You have seen it. Yes. Yes. We honored that agreement for 54 years, even after the men who signed it on our side were dead. We honored it because that was the deal. He paused. But then, 2 years ago, something changed. What your grandfather wrote us a letter. I went still. He wrote you a letter in May of 2024. Yes. What did it say? Lorenzo Marchetti reached into his attaché case. He pulled out a folder. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, photocopied. The original was somewhere in a vault in Italy. He turned it around. He slid it across the table. Toward me. My hands were shaking. I read. To the Heritage Department, my name is Elias Whitaker. You know who I am. I am writing to inform you that I am dying. The doctors give me 1 year, possibly less. I am writing to tell you that my granddaughter does not know who I am. None of my family knows. I have kept the agreement. I have kept it for 54 years. When I am gone, I am leaving the cars to her. Both of them. I am leaving her a key, a letter, the combination to the safe. She will find what I left for her, and she will understand. But there is something else. There is something that even she does not know exists. And I am asking you today to find a way to tell her. After I am gone. When she is ready. In 1974, after I returned to America. I continued my work privately. In my own garage. I filed 5 patents through an attorney in Boston. The patents were filed under a pseudonym, Elias M. Callahan, for reasons I think you understand. Those patents are still in use. Many of you still use them. Every high-performance engine made in the last 40 years has touched some part of what I made. The royalties were placed in a private trust. I have not touched them. I will never touch them. The money is poisoned. I made my peace with that in 1972. But the trust is not poisoned for my granddaughter. She has not made the bargain I made. She does not need to live under it. When I am gone, please find her. Tell her about the trust. Tell her she is the beneficiary. Tell her what is in it. And tell her that her grandmother, who was the wisest person I ever knew in my life, chose her. Long before I did. Long before any of this. I am writing this letter because I will not be able to tell her myself. Thank you for 54 years of silence. It was the right thing. It was always the right thing. Elias Whitaker. I read it. I read it again. I read it a third time. The words didn't change. I looked up. Lorenzo Marchetti was watching me. His eyes were wet. Ms. Whitaker, your grandfather. He filed the patents in 1974. There are 5 of them. They are foundational. They are used in a great many things. How much is in the trust? Yes. He paused. He cleared his throat. As of last quarter. $8,240,000. I dropped the page. It floated. It landed on the floor. Corbin bent down. He picked it up. He set it back on the table. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. The man across from me didn't say anything. I heard the refrigerator hum. I heard a clock tick. I heard my own breathing. $8 million. He sat in this kitchen for 50 years, in a brown cardigan, with a coffee mug. And he had $8 million that he never spent. Not on his daughter, not on his wife, not on himself. I thought I should be angry. I waited for the anger to come. It didn't come. Instead, a different feeling came. A feeling that was harder to name. It felt like awe. That a man could love his own dignity that much. That a man could sit at this kitchen table and drink black coffee from a chipped mug and carry that for 50 years without telling anyone. I started to understand him. I started finally to understand him. He couldn't touch it, I said. No, because the money was. The money was the price he paid in 1972. Yes. And if he touched it, if he used it, even $1, even for his daughter, even for his wife, then it would mean what they did to him in 1972 was okay. Yes, Ms. Whitaker, it would mean he sold himself. Yes. And he never did. Never. Not in 54 years. He let it sit. He waited for someone who could spend it without it costing them what it cost him. I looked at the letter. The last line. Her grandmother chose her. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I looked at Lorenzo Marchetti. I said, "Thank you for coming to tell us." He nodded. He stood. He picked up his attaché case. "There is one more thing, Miss Whitaker. The Ferrari. The 250 GTO. We, the company. We would be honored to buy it from you at fair market value. To bring it home. To Maranello. Where it belongs." Corbin looked up. I looked up. How much, Corbin said. That is for the auction houses to determine, but based on the last sale of a comparable car. Perhaps $65 million. Perhaps 70. The number landed on the table like a brick. Corbin didn't move. I didn't move. I thought for a long time. And then I said something that surprised me. I said, "No." Corbin looked at me. Lorenzo Marchetti looked at me. I looked at both of them. "No, thank you. The Ferrari is not for sale. Ms. Whitaker, Mr. Marchetti, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But that car is. That car is not money. That car was never money, not to my grandfather. And it cannot be money to me, or it would betray him." Lorenzo Marchetti nodded slowly. "I understand. I want it in a museum. I want his name on it. I want everyone who walks past it to know who made it possible. I want his story told out loud. Finally, that can be arranged. Then that's what we'll do." Corbin was staring at me. I could feel it. But I didn't look at him. I looked at Lorenzo Marchetti, I said. "And the Lamborghini. We'll sell that, to pay the bank, to save the house. The rest goes into a foundation, in my grandfather's name, his real name, no pseudonym." What kind of foundation, Ms. Whitaker, I thought. I thought for a minute. Then I said, "A workshop. A place where kids who don't have anything can learn how to make something. The way he did. In the garage he loved, on the workbench he used, with his hands." Corbin's eyes filled up. "And a fund," I said, "for the senior home where I work, for hearing aids, for the old women who can't hear their husbands anymore. Because he would have wanted that. And a scholarship, in my grandmother's name, Eleanor. Because she was the one who saw him first, and I am the one who sees now. Because of her. Is that okay with you?" I looked at Corbin. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Marlene, that's exactly what it should be." Lorenzo Marchetti smiled. "A real smile," he said. "Your grandmother, she chose well. I want you to sit with what just happened. I turned down $70 million in a kitchen in Western Massachusetts. Because some things aren't money, some things are people. And I know some of you are watching this and you're thinking, would I have done that? Would I have said no? Tell me the truth in the comments. Because I want to know. I want to know who else out there understands. Lorenzo Marchetti left that afternoon. He shook both of our hands. He said he would be in touch about the trust paperwork, about the museum donation, about a ceremony he would like to arrange, when we were ready, to put my grandfather's name on the wall there. I nodded. I thanked him. I watched his town car pull away down Maple Street. Then I went back inside. And I sat at the kitchen table. And Corbin sat across from me. And neither of us said anything for a long time. That night, late, I was standing at the kitchen sink washing coffee cups. Corbin had gone to bed. I heard tires on the gravel, slow, careful. I looked out the window. A car had pulled up to the end of the driveway. It was dark. I couldn't see it well, but I could see the shape of a man getting out. He walked up the driveway, toward the house. He stepped into the porch light. It was Thaddeus Merriweather. My heart stopped. I stood at the sink, watching him come up the porch steps. He knocked, once, twice, 3 times. I opened the door, but I didn't let him in. Ms. Whitaker, Mr. Merriweather, I want you to know. He held up a folder. That I represented your brother for 9 years. He signed a power of attorney with me 3 weeks ago, before any of this, when he was still in Chicago, trying to fix his finances. He held the folder out to me. I have full legal authority to act on his behalf regarding your grandfather's estate. That includes the vehicles. Now, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. I looked at him. I looked at the folder, and for 1 second, just 1 second, I felt fear climb up my spine. Then I thought about my grandfather. I thought about a man who sat across a table from lawyers in 1972 and refused to hand over his soul. I thought about a man who kept a promise for 54 years. I thought about a man who taught me, without ever teaching me, that some things are worth more than being safe. I looked at Thaddeus Merriweather. I said, Mr. Merriweather, my brother tore up that power of attorney this morning. He tore it up in front of me. His face flickered. More importantly, I have 3 pages of handwritten notes. Every word of the phone call you made in this kitchen at 6 a.m. yesterday. Every dollar figure, every name, every detail of your side deal with the overseas buyer. I paused. I have already made copies. I have already given them to Pastor Weller, and to Nora Kinley, and to Harriet Colby, and to a lawyer in Boston that Mr. Marchetti connected me with this afternoon. If you come near this house again, I will file a police report. Tonight. And I will send those pages to the Massachusetts Bar Association tomorrow morning, and you will lose your license. And you will lose everything. Do you understand me, Mr. Merriweather? His face was white. He stood there for a long moment. Then he turned, walked back down the porch steps, got in his car, drove away. I closed the door. I leaned against it. I was shaking, my hands, my whole body. But I was smiling, because I finally understood something else. My grandfather didn't just leave me the cars. He didn't just leave me the money. He left me himself. His spine, his stubbornness, his willingness to look a man in the eye and say, no, this is who I am, and you cannot take it. He left me his number, and I had just used it. Corbin went back to Chicago that weekend, but he came back the next Friday, with a U-Haul. I stood on the porch. I watched him pull into the driveway. He got out. He was wearing jeans. I hadn't seen him in jeans in 25 years. Not since he was 23, packing his bags for Chicago. He walked up the porch steps. He said, I sold the house. Chicago, yes. And the Lexus returned the lease. Corbin, and the boat. Corbin, Marlene. I'm broke, but I'm not broke. I have enough to start over. I want to start over. Where? Here. I looked at him. Here. In Cedar Hollow. In Cedar Hollow, Marlene. I called the bank yesterday. They have a small 2-bedroom for sale on Linden Street. Foreclosure, $68,000. I looked at him. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I laughed until my eyes watered. $68,000. The exact same number. The number that started all of this. Corbin laughed too. Then he stopped. He looked at me. He said, "Marlene, the garage. I want to. I want to run it. The restoration shop, if you'll let me. I'll work the books. I'll teach the kids. I'll learn the cars. I don't know cars yet, but I'll learn. Grandpa would have taught me. I missed it. I missed him. And I think this is how I find him again." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just walked down the porch steps. I hugged my brother for a long time. In the driveway in western Massachusetts. In October. While the leaves came down. 2 weeks later, I found the diary. I was cleaning out my grandmother's room. The room that had been closed since 1991. 35 years. The door had been shut. The bed had been made. There was dust on the dresser, an inch thick. There were clothes in the closet that hadn't been touched in 3 decades. I don't know why I decided to clean it. I just decided. I spent an afternoon up there boxing things, sorting. The clothes went to Goodwill, the shoes, the hats, the little perfume bottles on the dresser. I left the jewelry box for last. I opened it. Inside the jewelry box, there was a velvet tray, old necklaces, a ring, a pair of earrings, costume stuff, nothing valuable. I lifted the velvet tray out. Underneath the tray, a small leather book, brown, soft, the corners worn smooth, a diary. I sat down on the bed. I opened it. The first page said, Eleanor Whitaker, 1985. I flipped through it. She wrote in it almost every day. From 1985 until, I flipped to the back, until November of 1991, the week before she died. I started at the back, the last entry. It was short. November 12th, 1991. Margaret was here today, with the children. Corbin is 13, already so serious, already looking past this town, past this house, past all of us. He is becoming a man. He will go far. But Marlene. Oh, Marlene. Elias was sitting in the kitchen, working on a sketch, some new piece of an engine he is designing. For himself, for nobody, the way he does. Marlene came in. She is 10 now, tall for 10. She sees everything. She walked up behind him. She put her hand on his shoulder. She said, "Grandpa, are you okay?" He laughed. He turned to her. He said, "Yes, sweetheart. Why?" She said, "Your shoulders look tired." Elias did not speak for a moment. He pulled her into his lap. He held her for a very long time. "I'm leaving him soon. I can feel it. The doctors don't have to tell me. I know. But I am not afraid. Because that little girl is going to take care of him. In the ways I cannot. Not when she is 10. Not when she is 16. But someday. Someday, when he is gone. She will find what he left her. And she will understand. And she will become the person who carries this forward. I trust her, Elias. I trust her with you. I trust her with us. Eleanor. I sat on her bed, in a room that had been closed for 35 years, and I read the entry 3 times, 4 times. I didn't cry. I thought I'd run out of crying. I just sat there, and I let it sink into me, the way warm water sinks into cold ground. She knew. She knew when she was dying. She knew 35 years ago that I would do this. She trusted me with him. I went back downstairs. Corbin was at the kitchen table. He was making a list. He had a yellow legal pad and a pen, and he was writing things in his careful accountant's handwriting. Insurance for the shop. Tools. Lift. Compressor. He looked up. "Marlene. You okay?" I nodded. I sat down across from him. I put the diary on the table. He looked at it. "What's that, Grandma's?" Oh. He didn't ask what was in it. I was grateful. Some things take a while, I would tell him. But not today. 6 months passed faster than I would have believed. The Lamborghini sold in March. At a private auction. $1,760,000. We paid off the bank. We set up the foundation. We filed the paperwork for the trust transfer with the Boston law firm Lorenzo Marchetti connected us with. $8 million hidden account with my grandfather's name on it. His real name, Elias Whitaker. For the first time in 54 years, I looked at the bank statement on my laptop one Tuesday morning. I drank my coffee. I looked at it again. I realized I didn't want any of it. Not for myself. I wanted to keep my apartment over the laundromat. I wanted to keep my job at the senior care home. I wanted to keep the Corolla. The money wasn't mine. It was never going to be mine. I was just a carrier, the one who moved it from one place to another. So that's what I did. The Ferrari was donated to the New England Transportation Museum in May. The dedication ceremony was on a Saturday morning. I wore a black dress. Corbin wore a suit. A new one. Cheaper than the ones he used to wear. It fit him better. Harriet was there, in a blue dress. Pastor Weller, in his good jacket. Nora Kinley, who closed the diner for the first time in 15 years to come. Lorenzo Marchetti flew in from Italy. There were reporters. There were photographers. There were men in tweed jackets who write for car magazines. There was a glass case with my grandfather's blueprints inside. There were framed photographs of him on the wall. The one from Maranello. The one at the racetrack. The one at the podium. There was a small bronze plaque on the wall next to the Ferrari. It said, Elias Whitaker, 1938 to 2026. Engineer, innovator, quiet man. The world ran on what he built. He never asked it to thank him. I stood at the podium. I looked out at the crowd. 200 people. I took a breath. My grandfather, I said, was a man who fixed my bicycle when I was 8 years old. The room was silent. He told me that day in the garage, we just turned into a learning shop. This is our secret. I didn't know what he meant. I was 8. I thought he was talking about the bicycle. A small laugh rippled through the crowd. I smiled. I'm 45 now. I've been thinking about that day for a long time. And I think what he meant was, Marley, this place, this work, these hands, this is what is real. You are going to grow up. The world is going to try to tell you that the loud things are real, the famous things, the expensive things, the big houses, and the big titles, and the big names. I paused. He didn't say that. My grandfather wasn't a talker. He was a doer. But he showed it to me. Every Tuesday, in a diner that still exists, drawing engines on napkins, because he had to draw something, because he was a maker, and makers make. Whether anyone is watching or not. I looked down. I looked up. My grandfather wrote me a letter before he died. He told me the measure of a person is not what they own. It is what they give away. I'm here today to give you my grandfather. I'm giving him to you, to this museum, to everyone who walks past this car for the next 100 years. Look at him. Read his name. Say it out loud if you can. Elias Whitaker. He earned this. He earned this a long time ago, and he was too humble to take it, so I'll take it for him. I stopped. The room was silent. Thank you. I stepped back from the microphone. The room stood up. The room clapped. I saw Corbin at the back. His eyes were wet. I saw Harriet. I saw Pastor Weller. I saw Nora. I saw Lorenzo Marchetti. The applause went on for a long time. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I just stood there and let it happen. If you have ever been to a moment like that, where you spoke for someone who couldn't speak for themselves, comment yes. Just yes. I want to know you're there. A year and a half passed. The leaves came down on Maple Street the way they came down the week my grandfather died. The world went around. The world came back. I was sitting on the porch swing one October evening, my grandfather's journal in my lap, the one I found in the desk drawer the night I found the brass key. I hadn't read it all. I had been reading it slowly, a page a week, saving it, the way someone saves the last chapter of a book they love. That night, I was on the last entry, dated April 14th, 2026, a week before he died. Marley. I'm writing this knowing you'll find it. Maybe right away, maybe in a year, maybe in 10. Doesn't matter, you'll find it. Your grandmother told you what happened when you were 4. I won't write it again. She told it better than I could. But I want to tell you what it did to me. Because you don't know that part. I went out to the garage that night. I sat on the workbench. I cried for 2 hours. Nobody had ever asked me that question, Marley. Not in 38 years. Not your grandmother, though she knew. Not your mother. Not my own father, who died not knowing what I had done in Italy. Not one person on this earth had looked at me and seen sadness. Until you, and you were 4. I have thought about that day every single day since. Every year on your birthday. And I did. Every single year, I went out to that garage, and I pulled the tarps off those 2 cars. And I sat on the workbench, and I said your name out loud. I said, Marlene Whitaker, these are for you. When you're ready, I said it for 38 years. Now I'm going to die soon. The doctor said 2 months. I think it's less than that. I'm not afraid. Your grandmother is waiting. I've made her wait long enough. But I want you to know, the cars are not the inheritance, Marley. You are. You are the inheritance. You are the thing that comes after me. You and what you do with what I left you. Your grandmother saw it first. I saw it second. Now you see it. That's the chain. That's how it works. One person sees another person, and the chain gets longer. Make the chain longer, Marley. Find someone, some kid, some apprentice, some patient at the home, some 4-year-old at a kitchen table. See them. That's the inheritance. That's the only one that matters. I love you, Grandpa. I closed the journal. I didn't cry. I was surprised by that. I thought I would. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat on the porch swing. And I let it be true. The way I let the sun be true. The way I let the air be true. I thought about my grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, who saw a 4-year-old and said, that one. I thought about my grandfather, a man in a brown cardigan, who pulled tarps off 2 cars on my birthday for 38 years, and said my name out loud. I thought about Daniel, my husband, who I had loved for 20 years, who had died 3 years ago, who left me alone in an apartment above a laundromat. And I thought, maybe he sees me too. Maybe from wherever he is. He is watching this, and he is glad I found something to live for again. I thought about all the things I didn't know, all the things I never could have known, all the things that were happening in this house, in this garage, in this town. While I grew up, while I went to school, while I took care of my mother, while I said no to Boston, while I wore the same uniform to work for 15 years, while I thought I was nothing, I wasn't nothing. I was never nothing. I was the chain. I was always the chain. Behind me in the garage, I could hear them. The apprentices. 6 of them now. 3 boys. 3 girls. Corbin ran the shop. He still kept his accountant's handwriting on every clipboard. But there was grease under his fingernails now. There was a red bandana in his back pocket. He drank his coffee out of one of Grandpa's old mugs. He turned 49 last month. He looked 10 years younger than he did the day of the funeral. I heard a girl laughing. It was the new apprentice. Her name was Ruby. She was 16 years old. She was in foster care for 7 years. She came to the program last month. She didn't speak for the first 2 weeks. She was afraid to touch the tools. She thought she'd break them. Last week, Corbin showed her how to time an engine. She'd been laughing more since then. I heard another laugh. A boy this time. His name was Marcus. He was 17. He didn't think he was good at anything until last Tuesday, when he rebuilt a carburetor on the first try. Corbin told him, Marcus, you're a natural, Marcus cried, right there in the shop. He had never been called a natural at anything in his life. I heard them laughing in there now. 2 kids who didn't think they had a future, laughing inside my grandfather's garage. I thought about what the foundation had done in 18 months. The first scholarship class graduates next spring, 5 kids. One of them is a girl from Buffalo, single mother, first in her family to go to college. She designed a fuel injection system for her senior project. She won a national award. She wrote me a letter last week. She said, Mrs. Whitaker, I don't know how to thank you, but I will spend the rest of my life trying. I wrote her back. I told her, don't thank me. Build something quiet. Something good. That's how you thank him. The nursing home grant fund has paid for 47 hearing aids in its first year. I went to one of the fittings. A man named Harold, 83 years old. He hadn't heard his wife clearly in 6 years. They turned the new aids on. His wife said, "Hi, Harold." He started to cry. He looked at her and said, "Margaret, you're loud." She laughed. I stood in the doorway, and I cried with them. I stood up from the porch swing. I walked to the railing. I looked at the sky. It was getting dark. The streetlights came on along Maple Street one by one. The garage door opened behind me. Corbin walked out. He was wiping his hands on a red rag. He sat down on the swing. The swing creaked. He handed me a coffee mug. It was the chipped one, the one my grandfather used to drink from. His hair was going gray at the temples, but it was gray from work now, not from a stylist. "Marlene." You okay?" I nodded. "I was thinking about Grandpa." "Yeah." "And Grandma." "Yeah." The two of us sat there, in the late October light, drinking coffee, the way he used to, in a small town in western Massachusetts, in a house that almost got taken away from us, in a house we saved, and then turned into something he would have been proud of. Corbin looked at me. He said, "Marlene." "What now?" I smiled. I thought about a 4-year-old girl, and a man who held her in his lap and cried. I thought about the chain. I thought about Ruby, about Marcus, about every kid who was going to walk through that garage door for the next 40 years. I thought about all the things I didn't know yet, all the things that hadn't happened, all the people I hadn't met, all the apprentices, all the patients, all the 4-year-olds at kitchen tables. I thought about the inheritance, the real one, the one that had nothing to do with the money in the bank, or the car in the museum, the one that had everything to do with the simple, terrible, beautiful act of looking at another person and seeing them, really seeing them. I took a breath. I squeezed my brother's hand. I said, "Now we keep the chain going, Corbin. That's all. That's everything. We just keep the chain going." Ruby came running out of the garage, wrench in one hand, grease on her cheek. "Ms. Whitaker, Ms. Whitaker." I finished the carburetor. "Come see, come see." I stood up. I walked down the porch steps, toward the garage, toward the light, toward that 16-year-old girl who had never been told she was good at anything, until now. And I felt it. For the first time since Daniel died 3 years ago, I felt it. Home. I want to thank you for staying with me tonight. This story took everything out of me to tell, but I needed to tell it. Because I think somewhere out there is a widow watching this. There is a sister who hasn't spoken to her brother in years. There is a grandmother who is quietly leaving something for a granddaughter she is not sure will ever understand. There is a quiet man in a brown cardigan, sitting in a diner, drawing engines on a napkin, because that's the only place his work has to go. If you were moved by this story tonight, please subscribe to this channel. I tell stories about hope, about second chances, about finding home in places you didn't expect. I would be so grateful to have you here for the next one. Leave a comment. Tell me, who is the quiet person in your life who has been watching you your whole life? Who did you not see until it was almost too late? Say their name for me. Say it out loud tonight, because they mattered. They matter still. And before you close your phone, before you turn off the TV, please, go call someone you love. Or if you can't call them anymore, because they are gone, then say their name into the dark, and know they hear you. Because sometimes the most valuable thing a person leaves you is not what they owned. It is what they saw in you, long before you saw it in yourself, in memory of every grandfather who never got the credit, and every grandmother who knew. Good night.